To write a solo while the rhythm guitar is playing harmonic and melodic minor scale stuff right now on the spikes signal. So in order to talk about this songwriting concept, we're going to use the song Vultures by Arch Enemy. I did a bunch of other videos on this song. Right now, we're simply going to focus on the solo in this song. And by solo, I mean the first solo, because there's lots of solos in this song. Let's go ahead and listen to it all the way through on Guitar Pro and see how it sounds before we dig into what's happening here. So it sounds very chaotic, very kind of unhinged and unsettling, you might say. Let's go ahead and dig down and figure out how they're getting these sounds. So the first thing we need to talk about is the rhythm. Now, I've actually taken a different approach to analyzing this part than I did in my other videos, which just goes to show that sometimes in music theory there are multiple ways to look at something. But when it comes to this, I have decided that this part would best be understood from the perspective of F minor. All right, so that's where we're at. That's the key we're going to be working from when we're talking about this. Now, as you can see right here in our first measure of this solo at bar 28, we have the F chord, followed by the E diminished chord implication, the E flat chord implication, D minor chord implication, then following it up again, going through. We have a little fill right here, kind of an E flat major as well. But how am I deriving these chords? All right, so the first thing to keep in mind here is that when you're working with the harmonic and melodic minor scale, you need to think about what happens when you sharp or flat a note, okay? When you sharp or flat a note, for example, harmonic minor, if you're sharping the seventh, okay, if you're making the flat seventh a natural seven, what you end up happening here is not only do you sharp that, but you also affect the chord implications going down for all the other notes. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you're going to play F minor right here, and you want to play the root of the harmonic minor note, so to speak, and that would be the natural 7 in F harmonic minor, that root, that note is going to be an E, and the chords that follow off of it are going to be respectively a flat third away and a flat fifth away, because you in the harmonic minor scale. So the idea then becomes thinking about what chord would be implied if I'm on the root of the natural 7 in F harmonic minor. What you get is a diminished, because when you have a minor third and a minor fifth, or a flat third and a flat fifth, that's a diminished chord. So we're going to be interpreting this sort of chromatic walk down from F, the half step down, to E diminished, with the E diminished being a diminished, you know what I'm saying? So we're then going to move on to E flat, which is, in fact, the set flat 7 of F harmonic minor. So that's normal right there. But then what do? Well, we do the same thing when we get one half step down from E flat. We get to the D, okay, one half step away from E flat. And the natural 6 in the F melodic minor would have, if you go a third away, a flat third, and a fifth away, a flat fifth, giving you a diminished. So that's the idea. That's the logic of where we're analyzing this stuff from. So that's where the chords come from, you basically have a minor, F minor, then a diminished, E diminished, then a major. You have a major is the flat 7, the E flat 7, and then you have the D diminished, the 6, okay, the diminished 6, so to speak. So we're going to be analyzing all this stuff from that standpoint. So let's see what the solo guitar is doing now. So what do you have here for this first bar right here? Bar 28. You got this note right here that there would be an E natural. You got that bending up to the F, okay? So you're just kind of starting on the harmonic minor note, so to speak, and bending up. All right, that's fine, Then you have the fifth of F minor right here. So, more or less kind of grabbing from the harmonic minor already before we even moving anywhere, So we're going to go over here. Then we get to our E diminished, you know what I'm saying? Now the root of this chord is our harmonic minor note. It's the natural 7, all right? So what do we have here? Well, from the E diminished. Now, where it gets a little bit tricky is that when you're doing a solo in this kind of context, you don't necessarily have to stick to the implied chord, even though an E diminished chord would be the chord you'd expect to have happen here, with the root being the E in the key of F minor, you don't actually have to play that. As you can see, we actually don't have a flat fifth here. We have a regular fifth right here, that which then moves over to a flat six, to a 1, to a regular 5. So the important thing to keep in mind here is, even though you're in the harmonic minor, your solo does not have to only have constant uses of chord notes, the chord tones that would be implied from the harmonic minor. You know what I'm saying? Basically, you have a lot of non-diatonic stuff going on. Now, if we go ahead and move on over, I'm going to go ahead and get to the D right here, or rather the E. Now, at this point in time, we are back in the regular F minor. We are back to the E flat. That's the flat 7, back in regular old F minor. So if we look here, we have, you know, some fairly standard stuff. We got a 5 right here, but then we have a little bit of kind of weird bending, and, you know, Guitar Pro isn't great at showing like how the bends work and everything, but we have a little bit of bending going on that essentially gets you up to a flat 6, which isn't actually in the flat 7 of F harmonic minor, not in the chord anyways. So again, kind of have some non-diatonic action happening here before we fully get back into some diatonic movements, just kind of a little sequence starting on the 4, moving around all the way down to the 1. And this flat right here, that's just shown because the bend makes Guitar Pro notated. It's not actually, that's a flat within F minor, you know. So from there, we're going to go ahead and move on to the D diminished. Now, again, this diminished chord right here, we assume that because the root is a natural 6 during this measure, and the natural 6 has a flat 3rd and a flat 5th diminished sound, right? So even though that would be the implied chord, once again, you see how Arch Enemy is kind of moving outside of that. You know, we do have a flat 3, but we also have a little bit of movement to a natural 3, you know? You know, very creepy, very intense sounding, very aggressive sounding, you know, sounds cool and everything, but you got to keep in mind that it is moving outside of the key. It's part of that Arch Enemy sound. They do a lot of non-diatonic stuff to get that real intense and evil sound, if you would. So from there, we move into the next part. And then the verse comes in. So let's go back. We're going to go back to the F minor right here. So now, again, regular old F minor. We're actually diatonic right here. We have the 4th interval of that chord and then bends up to the 5th. And that's kind of screamy sound right there. The notation right here when you move back to the E diminishes is sort of like weird. I didn't really try to get at that one. But then what you can see is, once again, you have some natural 5s, which actually would not be within this assumed chord right here. But on top of that, you have a flat 2, very non-diatonic, almost barring for some kind of Elocrian sound. You know what I'm saying? So again, non-diatonic stuff is the name of the game if you want to make something sound dark and evil and creepy. And if you want to do it like Arch Enemy, these are the tools. How? We then move back to the E flat, back to the flat 7, and we are entirely diatonic here, actually. Go from the 5. Got some 4s in there, got some 3s in there. Again, the flat here is diatonic to the key of F minor. That's just there because the bending makes Guitar Pro notate it for some reason. So yeah, this is all sort of within key and such. We then move over here. And I wouldn't exactly call this the fill, but the bass does a little bit of a run. I just interpreted this as the E flat once again, and this is all sort of diatonic again to finish it out. You'll see right here we have a sharp in there. That's all based on how the thing is written. Sometimes stuff is shown inharmonically, so don't worry too much about that. You know, it's important to keep in mind here that when you're using non-diatonic tools to make your song sound aggressive and intense, there are certain methods that you can follow in order to make it sound aggressive and intense and evil in a certain way. And right here we covered some of those ways you can use right now to make your songs more intense. So if you like this video, I would appreciate you checking out a song I put out a while ago on Spotify. It's called Telestial Fray. You can find it by typing in Spikes Signal, just like you see it here on YouTube, on Spotify, and I'd appreciate it if you'd let me know what you think of it. So till next time, guys, I'll see you here at the Spike Signal. Thank you.